This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. On the show, you'll hear from everyday people changing their lives doing property development. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they've faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques that you can use to accelerate your property journey. I'm your host, Amanda McEwen, and I'm the founder of the Rising Star Developer, and I'm really passionate about helping everyday Australians build lifestyle using property development. Welcome back to Building Lifestyles. Today, prepare to be inspired as we delve into the remarkable journey of Dr. Grace Shah, a speaker, author, and visionary founder of the Mental Wealth Institute. As the founder of the Mental Wealth Institute, Grace has dedicated her life to helping others rediscover their passion and purpose through managing burnout. As a leader, volunteer, and creative entrepreneur, she tirelessly works to rejuvenate businesses and individuals' lives. Grace serves communities both locally and abroad and excels in diverse interests from property investment to event management and in the healthcare industry. Mental wellness is so important in your wealth creation journey because if you don't nurture the real estate between your ears, it will impact your results. So join us as Dr. Grace Shah shares the secrets to her mental wealth journey from burnout to abundance in relationships, wealth, and mental wellness. Grace's insights will leave a mark on your life and what you choose to do for work and how you create your wealth. So without further ado, let's welcome the extraordinary Dr. Grace Shah.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Amanda, for inviting me.
My pleasure. And this interview is a bit different from our past one. So I think in terms of mental wellness and mental wealth, it ties very nicely. We had a chat before the show around our backgrounds and the importance of what you do. So I'm so excited about the listeners to hear your story and the work that you're doing because it is such an important part of people's wealth creation journey because tactics are one thing. So what I teach in terms of property development, but there's so much headspace stuff that if you don't work on that and have that right, it really does impact that journey. So I'm so excited to have you here today to share with my listeners.
100%. I totally agree. I think a lot of all our life and our careers are impacted by our mindset and our mental wellness. And that's why I called my company Mental Wealth Institute, because I think once you get your headspace right, then it flows on into the other parts of your life, your wealth and your relationships, and also prevents you from burning out.
Yeah, amazing. So Grace, let's learn more about you. So I'd love for you to share with us the journey that you're currently on, because spanning from dentistry to entrepreneurship and property and mental wellness. So we had a great chat before we started this, and I'd love for you to share your background with the listeners.
Thank you. Yes, I do always, it's a bit of a party trick of mine when people ask me what I do. I'm like, I'm a dentist who does board work and public speaking, and I also do property development. And they're like, how do you do all of that? And what do you speak about? Oh, burnout prevention. How do you not burn out doing all of that? So I do work as a dentist part-time, currently 1 to 2 days a week, usually. I'm very blessed to have friends who actually give me positions where they encourage all my other roles and allow me to have that flexibility so that when I'm in the clinic, I actually am doing my best for my patients. I get the privilege of seeing people who I've seen. One of my patients was in year 2 when I first saw him, and he's now in uni. So yeah, that's the great part about, I think, healthcare and being a general dentist, that you can build those long-term relationships and really be involved in caring for someone's life holistically. But I also do some volunteer board work. I'm part of the Australian Dental Association Council in Queensland, and I'm on some not-for-profit boards as well. And in terms of my property development, that was actually part of my burnout prevention journey, even though at the time I didn't know that was what I was doing. So I grew up as a high achieving, typical Asian child who was top of my ear in high school and in uni. And you just follow the progression of what everyone else expects of you. And I was quite a happy follower. Yeah, like I wasn't bitter or angry or anything. I actually really enjoyed all the achievements and accolades and positive affirmations I get from my family and my community for being a high achiever as they want me to be. But when I graduated from uni, then after you've been in the workforce for a few years, you think about, oh, what can I achieve next? Or what's next? What's the next step? So as a dentist, the natural path is either to open your own practice or go back and specialize, or you can also teach at uni and become an academic. So I actually try opening a practice, but for my ex-husband at the time, who was also in healthcare. So I actually did do that. But then I realized that dental practice ownership was not something I wanted to pursue on top of that. And I also taught at uni. I actually demonstrated for 2 years back in 2013 for one of the unis in Queensland. And I realized I couldn't hack the politics in academia. And then the third option was specializing. And while I was considering that, my research supervisor in fifth year uni, who I was very close to and really respected and looked up to, he actually passed away in his 30s in the dental hospital while doing research and was found on the weekend. You know, I think that when you have deaths like that, it really impacts you and makes you think about life a lot more, and you gain a bit of perspective on what are we doing with our limited time. And so I realized maybe going back and studying more and achieving more accolades wasn't what I wanted in life. And instead, I decided to go on a volunteer trip overseas. And I offered my services to a few volunteer organizations I was aware of, and I was allocated to a trip to mental hospitals in East Asia. And I was actually doing translation for psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers in big education programs in the local community, and also seeing patients in psych wards and in orphanages. And I think that trip really changed my perspective on what paths I have as a dentist. I realized I had a lot of transferable skills and I could serve people and find fulfillment in ways other than just the typical dentist paths. So I came back and I started doing a lot of personal development courses, including business development, and ended up just landing in this property development course. I thought it was a scam initially. And yes, as a lot of us get targeted all the time on social media to go to these one-day free events. But I actually, when I turned up at the event, I was sitting next to people who I actually knew and trusted, who highly recommended the course and said that it wasn't a scam. So I decided to sign up. And through that, I ended up in a mentorship program where I got very involved in the property community. And I ended up in some joint venture projects, including a 4-pack townhouse. So that was all going quite well. But then my husband at the time wasn't actually on board with the process like I thought he was. And he locked me up in a psych ward and said that I was overspending money and behaving out of character. So as a health professional, that's quite a concern, obviously, to people like the dental board and authorities and doctors involved when a healthcare professional is being accused of mental health issues and they won't admit to it. So just to clarify for those who might be in healthcare out there, if you do have mental health issues and you are well aware of it and you're seeking help, you won't get into trouble. Actually, the dental board is fully supportive of people seeking help and getting counseling, but I was very resistant because I knew I didn't have an issue and it was a domestic issue, because I kept insisting that I don't need help. That's why I got locked up, and I had to go through a big process to clear my name and get monitored so that all the authorities all agreed that I didn't have a mental illness. So yeah, after that, obviously got divorced. Yeah, it's hard to journey with someone who you couldn't trust. I actually, at one stage had to call police to my house to rescue me, to take me to a talk I was giving. Ironically, the talk was about my trip to mental hospitals in East Asia. Yeah. So I have great gratitude for our healthcare system and first responders who actually realized very quickly whether a situation was a healthcare issue or a DV issue. But obviously it was quite a stressful process to clear that. glad to share that I am still practicing as a dentist. I'm now on the Dental Association Council because I was helped a lot by the Dental Association during that process. They actually helped me go through removing my conditions with the dental board. And I actually still do property development now. So yeah, definitely it's been a bit of a journey, but I get to enjoy the best of all the worlds.
Amazing. And so that's such an incredible journey. There's so many layers to what you've shared with us. So what actually led you to go down the mental wealth path? I mean, of course, your experiences, but what particular avenue? Because you're still doing property development, you're still doing dentistry, but understandably from that experience, you've got a big passion for mental wellness, having experienced both sides of the fence quite, strongly. So just let us know that journey, how that's evolved into that area.
Yeah. So initially, I hadn't really had a plan of starting a company or starting any ventures in this area. I was actually just planning to write a book because 3 months after I was released from the psych ward, I was very blessed to be on a trip with Sir Richard Branson through Virgin Unite. And, that's a whole nother story. But while I was on the trip, I got to actually sit in some safari vehicles with Richard and I told him a bit about my story. And he's like, oh, that's an incredible story. You should write a book. So I was sort of just working on writing a book. Initially, the book was going to be about, my victim journey and the triumphs afterwards. But then I realized as I talked to more and more people about my story that sometimes talking about me is not the most helpful thing. And what I really wanted to achieve is actually to change culture in workplaces and system, which obviously had some failures, which is why I had to go through what I went through. But waving a flag around saying I'm a victim of the system, I think does not help with the change. And I could really, as a health professional, really actually empathize with the people who made the mistakes along the way in that system because they have so much time pressure and they don't have time to listen to different people's perspective, or they may not have their own life experiences or their cultural backgrounds to understand what I was going through at the time. So I think that's why I do a lot of board work now, because I feel like I need to be, in that space where there are leaders who are wanting to improve and change organizational culture and systems and use my life experiences to help in shaping that process for a positive outcome. So my book became, which I'm still working on, I'm hoping to publish this year, is called Mental Wealth, How to Journey from Burnout to Abundance, because I feel like that is actually more helpful rather than hurtful and, being a story about myself. It's about how I can use my experiences and what I've learned to help others. And the word mental wealth is actually a play on mental health because we have such a stigma associated with mental health. The word mental health is actually a very neutral word. It's a spectrum. You can have mental wellness, which is on the good end of the spectrum, or mental disease or illness, which is on the bad end of the spectrum. But when people say mental health, they automatically assume you're talking about it negatively, whereas we want to actually focus on mental wellness and how to achieve that. And when you go beyond just wellness, then I think that's when you feel wealthy. And I really like Morgan Housel's quote on what is wealth. It's not just monetary wealth, but actually, the ability and the freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. And having been, on volunteer trips multiple times and gone overseas to countries that are not as lucky as Australia, I can see there are a lot of people with no wealth, very opposite to wealth, but they are so joyful and free and happy and grateful for what they have, whereas people in first world countries who are not suffering poverty, majority of us really are not, compared to a lot of these other people I see, but we can't actually seem to be healthy and we have the highest rate of burnout in the world. So, it really gives you perspective. So that's why, as I started sharing with people about my idea of writing the book, I got invited to speak and I, then started a company structure to ensure that it's all done properly. So that's why it's called Mental Wealth Institute.
And I love that. And I love how you've gone from that angle, because it's like with my business, right? My my main focus is on building lifestyle, and
Mm.
this learning the strategies of property development are just the tools and the mechanics of how to achieve that. And yeah, I love how you've connected mental wealth. I think that is such an important part, whether it's building lifestyle or any part of your life, right? And wealth is so much more than just the money we bring in, because the money is just the enabler. It's really what you do with that money that does bring you your wealth. So I absolutely love that you've gone down that angle, which is incredible. And one thing you also mentioned when we were talking earlier is you were talking about your experience in South Africa with Richard Branson and the people that you were surrounded with, and how that really changed your perspective around your journey at the time and your mindset going forward. I'd love for you to just share with the listeners about that experience.
Yeah, I think when I speak about that trip, I usually, try not to name drop too much, all the different people I met, and everyone knows, Sir Richard Branson, and he's like a main attraction for people signing up to experiences like that. But that trip was actually also through Virgin Unite, which is a charity arm that Virgin runs. And it was actually a volunteer trip. So we actually donated money to causes in South Africa that Virgin Unite supports. And we actually mentored young business people and entrepreneurs that were, sort of chosen out of poverty by those local organizations. And some of them were given education, like a business course. Some of them were given the opportunity to be mentored or in a network. And we helped them sort of exit poverty. And we were really blessed to actually be able to go and see some of their homes as well. So these beautifully dressed young men and women who you would not be able to, differentiate them if they were in Australia at a networking event to us. The one I visited, she lives in a shack with 10 other people and shares a room that's the size of Harry Potter's cupboard under the stairs with her aunt. And, but they're so grateful and joyful and happy. And at the institute where they were studying the business courses, one of the young men actually stood up and said, I am not a previously disadvantaged individual. I am a CEO because I'm currently exposed to opportunities. And I think that was very impactful for me, because a lot of times we limit ourselves and what opportunities we have. And a lot of people like to blame their circumstances or their parents or their upbringing or their bosses, when they're burning out or they're struggling. But really, what opportunities are you exposed to and what can you do with that? And I really like the quote about, how you need to look at your circumstances and see what you can change and actually have the courage to change what you have control over, and wisdom to know the difference between what you have control over and what you can't. So yeah, I think that's something that really impacted me and helped me think about my path forward as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you're also mentioning how the people you were surrounded with that actually changed your perspective around your previous peers, I guess. I'd love you to share about that, because surrounding yourself with people that enable you is so important as part of this journey, isn't it? So I'd love for you to share that with the listeners.
Yeah. So the other flip side, not the South Africans, so the people I was traveling with, a lot of them were amazing business people who are a lot more successful than me at the time. And yeah, I found that observing them and observing Richard and his team, they were actually so passionate about what they do. And I used to have this like allergy to wealth and money as a health professional, because I thought if I talk about money, I must not be a very nice person. I must be a very not caring, not ethical person. But actually, I think money is a vehicle, as you said, like you can build wealth in many different ways. And I actually say this when I go and lecture at unis to healthcare professionals or hospitals. Why do we do healthcare? It's important to know why you're in it. If you're just in it for money, there are much faster and easier ways to make money if that's your goal in life. But really, we in the profession where we actually get to care for people, and healthcare, the word is about how to practice healthcare with care. So I think, yeah, on that trip, it really changed my perspective and relationship with money and wealth, and seeing how good people with money can actually make impact and actually really change other people's lives. And money is something that magnifies how, their philanthropy and all the good works they can do. And also I realized that maybe I wasn't crazy like people around me were saying. And, a lot of, if you look at what Richard Branson does and what he writes in his book, if his wife was like my ex, she'd probably lock him up in the psych ward. But he's not crazy. He's just thinking outside the box, and he's around the right people who support him and cheer him on as he does that, and are able to fill in the gaps when he's off doing his adventures. So I think that changed my perspective on pleasing people around me and doing things that are true to and aligned with my values, and then finding my tribe of people who actually can be joyful when I'm doing well and cheer me on and encourage me to do better.
Yeah, and that's such an important perspective, right? And that's something that's certainly nurtured inside of my Inner Circle program at the Rising Star. And when you do go down this wealth creation journey, or any journey in life really, you do suddenly get opinions of others that aren't on a similar journey, and people think, oh my God. I remember when I first started my property journey, I had some family members and friends going, what are you doing? Like, you've got no idea. You don't have no idea how to do property or build property or do anything like that. And they thought that I was crazy too. And how could I possibly do something that's different from following the mainstream of career trajectory? So I understand where you're from as well. And that's where I think it's so important you don't necessarily have to dismiss those people in your life, but you work quickly who you can and can't have those sort of conversations with. And I think when you can surround yourself with people that get what you're trying to do, it does really elevate you to a whole new level, because you're not being pulled back by people who don't understand your journey. You're suddenly being supported and elevated by people who get it. I think once you can surround yourself with people like that, you end up just absolutely accelerating where you want to go to, just because it just opens your mind. You're not having that limiting belief and that limited people around you just holding you back. So that's such an important perspective, to surround yourself with amazing people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I was very much aware and warned of that when I signed up to my first property development course. Actually, some of the mentors actually came up to me and my ex at the course and said, it's so wonderful that you're here together, because divorce rates are very high for people who start getting into property development, because if their values or their wealth ideas are not aligned, a lot of people find it hard to continue in their marriage during this journey, because there's so much risk and so much money at stake. So they were actually really happy for me that I was there along with my life partner. But unfortunately, my life partner was physically there, but maybe not fully there, or maybe when he actually underwent the stressful situation of having to transfer the money out, it changed his perspective. And yeah, I'm very grateful now. Actually, I'm married to my current husband, who is on this journey with me, and he's now working in property management and doing developments. And when I met him, I had a very low view of myself and very poor self-esteem. And he said, oh, you've got these cool photos on your phone with Richard Branson. How come I've never seen you posted on any social media? I was like, oh, I don't want to make people think I'm full of myself, or I don't want to make other people feel bad. And he's like, oh, that's really weird, because wouldn't your friends just be very happy for you? Or people who love you, they just be really happy for you that you've had this experience, right? So I knew, like, he came from a very opposite background to me, obviously, where, his family's all about compliments and cheering each other on and just freestyle, do whatever you want. So, yeah, so I think that really, he's really helped me elevate myself and grow and not limit myself. And I'm not saying people should actually break up with their partners or their friends if they're not on the same journey. I still have a lot of friends who I catch up with. I have people I've known all my life, or high school friends or uni friends at different stages of my life that I still catch up with. Not all of them will understand what I do, but the ones I keep around are encouraging and happy for me that I've actually gone through a tough time and I'm come out the other side looking a lot better. And they just be able to celebrate with me. They don't need to actually understand what I do.
Yeah, and that is a really good point, because as we know in life, we have different people. People come into your life for a reason or a season or a lifetime, and people fill you up in different ways, depending on what you need, and also vice versa. So that is such an important point. And I think I also love the point that you raised about getting your partner on board, and that's something that I certainly speak to with anybody of my students and also people considering property development. It is so important to have your partner on board through this journey, because you're right, there is lots of shared finances, and you want to have shared goals in terms of the decisions that you're making, that it's heading in the path that you want to go to. And that does require having your partners to support you. So I always say, look, bring your partner on board, let them hear the material, let them come and hear me talk, or let's go and have a conversation with both of you, because it's always like, it's like when you're a parent, right? You tell your child to do one thing and they'll go, yeah, mum, whatever. And then they'll hear exactly the same thing from somebody else. And suddenly it's, oh, did you hear this amazing idea? I say that just recently. And it's the same with your partner, right? Sometimes you just need that conversation to be had, or that discussion with somebody other than yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I even know with my own, I've had many conversations in my community about this with my own husband, who is risk averse. And there always tends to be one partner that's risk averse and one partner that is the risk taker. And can be that certainly does create an interesting dynamic with some heated conversations. And we still have many challenging conversations now, and I pull him up and he pulls me down, and we end up meeting in a middle ground that is actually where we should be anyway. So as frustrating as it can be for anybody who's got the risk averse partner, it is actually part of the process that makes you sharper at what you're doing by being able to manage that. But I think also it's always really important, whatever wealth creation journey and life journey that you go down, it should always be relationship first. And any other decision around that, takes that into considering that as the forefront. So and making sure that you're on the same page, and if you're not, then can keep having those conversations or get some help from external people to make sure that you are on the right page. So, and then like yourself, you might work out that, hang on a sec, this might actually be the magnifying glass to realize that perhaps it's not the right person for you, and not, this is a marriage. This is no not saying get your partner if they're not on the same board, absolutely not. But it just part of the journey of life and your journey of relationship, isn't it? So work. If you can find that middle ground with your partner, it does make for an incredible journey together.
Yeah. I totally relate to what you said about you and your husband, because, Nick, my current husband, he's the same. So I'm the one who's out there and very intuitive, and I'm just like, yes, let's buy this land like now. And then he's like, oh, hang on, let me just do my research first, give me a sec. And I'm like, it's slowing me down, but it's actually good that someone is able to check that my intuitions are right, or pull me back a bit to make sure we screen the deals properly. And I want to encourage people as well that your partner doesn't have to be exactly on the same page as you, in where you are in your property journey. When I met Nick, he actually has never owned a property in his life. He was renting his whole life, and he was not educated to know that he could actually buy a property with a loan from the bank. He thought he had to save up 100% before he could buy his first property. So, it was actually through meeting me that he ended up having his own, first property. And then from there, he signed up to further property education, because he actually really enjoyed that process of watching me organize the build and run the trades and things like that. So, I don't think you need to be exactly on the same path, and you can be complementary as well, but you need to be supportive and encouraging of each other and willing to communicate and listen and grow together.
Yeah, so true. Now, from your experience, what do you see the main factors causing burnout today? And I know it's there one particular thing. What are you seeing from your experiences?
Yeah, so I think burnout, actually, it was ironic, because when I was burning out, the definition of burnout wasn't very clear, and it wasn't a very well spoken of area. In 2019, which is when I got locked up in the psych ward, that was actually when the WHO actually defined burnout as chronic workplace stress, and that it's not a mental illness, but a syndrome or a collection of symptoms of what happens when you are in chronic stress. They refer to it as your occupation, but I think occupation can be a bit grey, because, a lot of mothers burn out. And, if you call mothering a job, or a lot of people volunteering can burn themselves out and they're not being paid for it, but it's part of what they do for work. So yeah, so I think burnout, the symptoms that, like, WHO has this, list of symptoms that qualify you for it. And basically it's, a bad response to stress. What differentiates it from actually mental illness or true depression or bipolar or anxiety is, even though you've got these crossed over symptoms, you're actually happy. You're able to be happy when you stop doing what you're doing that is making you burnt out. So, if you actually had depression, for example, you would just be in a low a lot of times. Even when happy things happen, you can't actually get yourself, out of your bed to celebrate or feel that joy. But if you have burnout, then you would be very, like acting very differently, or frustrated with people at work, or low when you have to go to work. But then when the weekend comes, you're back to your normal self again. So I think that's a good way of practically looking at it, or an example. And I think for me, I find preventing burnout, a lot of it is about mindset or about perspective. So in my book, I actually cover 5 practical sort of points of what I find helpful in my own journey. And the acronym I use is actually called GRACE, which, is my name. But also GRACE is actually a really overused word. Growing up as a Christian, grace in the religious sense is like, there's a big definition of it with God showing grace and kindness to sinful people. But nowadays we actually use it a lot in the non-religious sense as well. And it's a reminder for myself to actually show kindness towards myself, so I can show kindness to others as well. Grace for me stands for gratitude, which is actually being grateful for everything and everyone that you have in your life, and even the bad experiences. I'm grateful for a lot of those. And then is for rest or recharge, actually knowing what rest is. It might not be just physical rest, because people who might be suffering from depression or anxiety, they could sleep all day, but they still don't feel rested. Or people think, oh, if I quit my job and start another career, I won't be burnt out. But actually, no, if you actually don't know how to care for yourself and recharge, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually as well, you will find no matter what you do in life, you will feel burnt out. And then A is for acceptance. So that quote I said before, to accept the past and present circumstances that you can't change, and encourage to change what you can, and wisdom to know the difference. And then C is for compassion, to be kind and compassionate to others, but also more importantly to yourself, because if you aren't showing compassion to yourself and able to forgive yourself of your past and move forward, then it's very hard for you to be a happy person and be kind to others. And then E is for encouragement, which you've sort of brought up before, having actually a community of people who can actually encourage you and support you in what you want to do, but also to use your experiences to be an encourager for others as well.
Yeah, oh, that is amazing. I absolutely love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much gold in that, and I love how you've incorporated that with your name. So that's fantastic. I can't wait to read your book. So just to wrap up, can you give the listeners one tip to take away from our discussion today that might help them, that they can use right away to, you've gone through the grace concept, which is really useful as well. What one tip would you give to someone to help them maintain or work towards their mental wealth and minimize burnout?
I often, for my sort of inspirational keynotes, I like to finish on this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson about success, because I think success or wealth is actually something people need to change in their mindset first before they can actually figure out what brings them joy or what they're passionate about, and find gratitude and fulfillment in their day-to-day life. So yeah, this quote, I really love the definition of what is success: to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, and to leave the world a bit better, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And what an amazing way to close today's podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Very grateful for your words and hearing your experience, and such a beautiful definition of success, which completely connects with me as well. I'm sure it's going to connect with many of the listeners. So thank you so much. We'll also put in the show notes links to your website if anyone wants to learn more about Grace and her mission around mental wealth. And certainly keep an eye out for when her book is released. I think it would be an incredible read for anyone, regardless of what stage you're at. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for interviewing me, and I really enjoyed our conversation, Amanda.
Thank you so much for listening. This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. This podcast was produced by the Rising Star Developer. We've been helping Australians realise their financial and lifestyle goals since 2020. We play a pivotal role in educating, supporting and celebrating the goals and successes of our students and our community. To find out how we can help you realise your property, wealth and lifestyle goals, head to our website www.risingstardeveloper.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Building Lifestyles, be sure to subscribe to and follow the show in your favourite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review, as it really helps others find the show. I'm Amanda McEwen, and we'll be back next episode with more tips on how you can build your lifestyle.